This is the No Fear podcast. We know what scares you.
I'm Matt.
I'm Mel.
And I'm Lisa.
And this is the No Fear Cast, the podcast where we dissect horror and all the things that scare us. We are back from our holiday hiatus just in time for a blanket of snow and ice to trap us all inside once again. So join us for some snow day recommendations.
So I'm going to start us off here, listeners. And as Matt mentioned, 2026 started just in time for winter to decide to wake up and make a big mess. So we are all right. We've been trying to stay warm, and we have now returned after our holiday hiatus to give you guys some recommendations. We're going to be talking about some things we've been reading or watching lately. My particular picks include something I read over the holiday break, something I read kind of at the end of 2025, and then something I'm looking forward to. So that's kind of how I approached it. So I'm going to kick us off here in our typical round robin style recommendations that we do. So the first book I'm going to talk about is a book that I read late last year. I want to say I read it over Thanksgiving break, actually. So I guess I got two holiday picks in a way. And it is The Spite House by Johnny Compton. Now, this book came out a couple years ago. Well, a few years ago now at this point, in 2023. And I was super excited about it when I heard it was out because I do like haunted houses. And I purchased it and had it. It moved with me when I recently moved, and I still hadn't read it yet. And so I'm trying really hard. I started this like last summer, and I'm still doing it to try to steadily read things that I already own, because I'm terrible about having like huge to be read stacks and not getting to them because I'm busy grabbing new stuff from the library or something. So I read The Spite House. I very much enjoyed it. I'm going to do my best not to spoil anything and just give kind of a back of the book skeleton description here. So we have our main character in The Spite House, Eric Ross. He, at the beginning of the book, is on the run with his two daughters, his two kids. Something has happened in Maryland, where they're from. And this is something that kind of slowly unfolds throughout the course of the book. So we don't know right away what happened, but they're running away. They've changed their names. They're desperate to find places to land where they can be safe, make some money. They've got plans to try to get to Texas, but they have to keep moving around, especially when they think people might recognize them or be following them. So Ross is looking for work, basically in kind of the classifieds, I guess, but I think he's looking around the internet for work. And he finds this advertisement for this house in DeGener, Texas. And he's decided that this may be their lucky break, because basically this is supposed to be one of the most haunted places in Texas. And the person who owns the property is looking for a caretaker. Basically, they're looking for a caretaker and a paranormal investigator. They want someone to stay in the house and observe and take notes on everything that happens so that they can have proof finally that ghosts and hauntings are real. And you have to stay there as long as you possibly can. But unfortunately, in the past, everybody who's tried this has had a very, very, very bad time and didn't last that long. But there's this huge this huge payout if you can complete this project. And we know at the very beginning that our character here, he is interested in understanding the supernatural. So the idea for him is like, I really need this job. We've been trying to get to Texas. I can get to Texas and do this job. If I do the job, I'll get this money, and then I may learn something about things that have happened to me in the past that I have questions about. And so we basically have this kind of gothic thriller about family, individual identity, history. The paranormal investigation aspect is pretty cool. I really enjoyed the book, especially the way Compton kind of handled the way the house was haunted and what it was doing to these people. And also, I'd never really thought of the fact of spite houses before, but I was really fascinated by the idea of building a weird house that's dimensions just fit exactly the tiny place you want it to be to mess with or block other people because you don't like them. It's a house built out of spite, literally. So you not only have that negative energy of someone building a house just to piss off all the people around it, but you also have the fact that it's probably haunted by whatever happened. So it's a really interesting book. It has multiple kind of timelines because you're following like the history of the house and the families, plural, connected to it, plus Eric Ross and his kids, and you're finding out what happened to them. So I very much enjoyed reading this over my holiday break last year, and I'm glad I finally got to it after wanting to read it for so long. So that's my first, The Spite House by Johnny Compton.
Well, I will jump in. I'm really glad we're doing this recommendations episode. I've been reading quite a bit and watching quite a bit, but when I was narrowing it down, I decided I was going to do a book that I just finished, a book that I'm currently reading, and then what I'm calling the wild card. So I just finished the book The Bewitching by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. I was a huge fan of Mexican Gothic as when it came out. It was just one of those books that I was like, oh, this is exactly my kind of story. And I had bought a few of her books since then. And Mel, I really felt like you were calling me out when you were saying, you want to read more of the books you have at home because I'm I'm almost embarrassed to admit that I have some of her books that I'm just sitting on my shelf waiting to be read. And I think it's because I like her stuff so much that I keep waiting for a time when I can like really sit down and focus and enjoy it. And so it keeps getting pushed a little bit further because everything just seems to be so up in the air. But anyway, I wanted to read the Bewitching, which is her newest one, and it has this gorgeous cover, which really just got me. And I knew it was about witchcraft, and so I was like, okay, I have to see what she does with this. And I will say, it did not disappoint. It, I think, Scooted Out Mexican Gothic is now my favorite of hers. It's basically, it takes place over 3 different timelines. So you've got, I think it's like early 1900s, this woman named Alba. She's living in Mexico, and she has her family farm there. And there is some sort of witch that has bewitched her family and is causing them trouble. And so she's trying to solve that mystery of who the witch is and what she can do. Then it kind of fast forwards a little bit to around 1930s, and it is a school in Massachusetts, a university. You have this woman, Beatrice, who wants to be a writer. She's studying there, and her roommate mysteriously goes missing. And there was rumors of, like, some people are saying she ran off with a man, but some people are saying, she had gotten into some like dark witchy stuff. So you kind of have that theme carrying through. But then the third timeline really kind of ties it all together because you have Alba's great granddaughter, I think, Minerva, who is at the university studying Beatrice, the author, because she did end up writing, and that's her favorite author. And so she's there doing research as a graduate student, but then some of the witching starts to happen again. And so she has to use what she's been researching plus what she was taught by her Nana and kind of tie it all together. Anyway, it's this great book about, I mean, it's very gothic. There were so many like gothic themes and tropes running through the book, much like Mexican Gothic, but it's also got Mexican folklore. It's got some really good moments of horror. And I just personally thought it was fun because Minerva's timeline is 1998. And so there were a ton of late 90s like touchstones. Like at one point, she's in the library researching, listening to Neutral Milk Hotel um, on her little Walkman. So I was like, oh, this is fun. It was a fun book. I enjoyed it. So yeah, that is my first recommendation. I just finished it. The Bewitching by Sylvia Moreno Garcia.
Well, I guess it is my turn to give my first recommendation, and uh, I will give my first one as a recommendation as a movie. It is, well, excuse me. It's called The Life of Chuck, and it's directed by Mike Flanagan. So if you are a longtime listener, know that we're big fans of Mike Flanagan over here at the No Fear Cast. We've done several watch throughs of his Netflix series. And so when I saw that he was adapting, I believe it was originally a novella by Stephen King into the movie, I was very interested to see it. I was not familiar with the source material, hadn't read it, and but I loved the movie. It's a really good movie. It's from the Stephen King, who is not the horror writer Stephen King, if that makes sense. It is the Stephen King, but people who have read enough of his work know that some of his stuff is very horror, and some of his stuff is not. And this really falls more in the not. But it's a really interesting film, which I did some looking, and apparently it does borrow its structure from the original novella, but it's sequenced in three very distinct acts, and they're kind of in reverse chronological order. And the first one, it follows Chiwetel Ejiofor and Karen Gillan as they are living through what is essentially a very slow death of the universe. Um, it's hard to say much more than that without giving some things away, but their acting and that entire section is very well done. There's just a lot of depth and emotion that they convey throughout the entire uh, section of their act. The second act, is following the actual titular Chuck, if you will, and it's pretty much simply just an afternoon where he starts dancing in the street in front of a busker for no apparent reason. He just decides to start dancing, and a woman in the crowd is moved to start dancing with him. And he, afterwards, they walk and talk and become friends for the afternoon. He's married and has no romantic interest in her, but they just sort of talk and have this bonding moment. So then the final act, the what they call Act One, is follows him from childhood into kind of early adolescence and adulthood, and you kind of get to see that he was orphaned at a very young age and raised by his grandparents. And it's hard to say much more without revealing some of the really good parts of the movie, so I don't want to spoil anything, but it's a really good movie. And while I wouldn't say that it is heartwarming, uh, it does it does make you just kind of want to stop, slow down, and appreciate all the small moments of life. And that is one of those important messages that, as I, in my middle age, am really coming to appreciate myself. So, yeah, it's a great little movie. It's it's not an Oscar contender, but it's a good way to spend 90 minutes. So, Life of Chuck, by directed by Mike Flanagan.
Okay, so I am up again, and I am going to be talking about V.E. Schwab's latest book, Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil, which I believe came out last summer. I read this over my holiday break. It was the first book that I listened to in 2026, And if Matt's recommendation makes you stop and think and realize the importance of small moments in your life and is a little bit thoughtful and verging on heartwarming, this is not necessarily that. This is women who are vampires behaving poorly to everybody, but it's entertaining. And I don't want to give any spoilers, but I am going to talk just a little briefly about how it's kind of structured. So we have three women in three kind of separate timelines, but because we have vampires, time meshes, they can live for a very long time. And so we start out in the 1500s, I believe in Spain, and we have this character, Maria, who is about to be married off. She does not like this. She feels like she needs more choices, more independence. She's kind of inspired by this woman who is on her own, who she sees a couple times in her life. This woman is very mysterious. And this stranger, this woman, offers her an alternate path. And Maria sets out on this new life, and she ends up running across a couple other people later. And so our other character, Charlotte, is living in the 1800s in London. She comes from money. She thinks she has time before she's going to end up being on the marriage market, but something happens. She gets sent to London to be with other family, and her life just starts speeding up. And she doesn't like the fact that she might be losing her independence. And then she makes a choice that leads her on an alternative path to what she was headed on. And she thinks maybe will offer her some more freedom. And then we have a more contemporary time period of 2019, 2020 in Boston, where we have Alice, who has left behind a really traumatic life in Scotland and is kind of grieving to attend college in Boston. And she runs across a young woman who appears to be, her age, and they hit it off and have kind of a one night stand. And her life is changed in various ways as well. And so you have kind of these three different characters kind of running into each other at various points in their life. They're three very intense characters, I will say, too. This is my second V.E. Schwab. I read Schwab's book, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, about immortality. I enjoyed that book. And I like this one too. Of course, it's about vampires, so you have the immortality theme, but you also have the hunger theme as well. And in what happens when you're offered a choice like this, whether you could ever fully comprehend it or not. I think the other thing I like about it is its kind of expansiveness. I know that's not for everybody, but Schwab is a very descriptive and immersive writer. And I like that. I like dipping in and out and being in these different periods and seeing what they're seeing and learning about them and kind of gleaning this information. So, we're obviously getting it from the perspectives of the characters in the book because they have their own points of view. But I like that kind of immersive and expansive view that you get in this book. Now, I know that's not for everyone. It is like a 500-page book, but that was one of the things I enjoyed about it. I felt like during my holiday break, I could just really kind of sink into it and listen to the story. So that is V.E. Schwab, Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil.
Matt, I just wanted to say that I too watched The Life of Chuck, and it was so good. it I was not expecting it to pull on the heartstrings as much as it did. It made me cry, but in kind of a life affirming way, if that makes sense. um, anyway, yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yes, that was exactly what I was trying to get across.
Yeah, because it wasn't like I was worried it was gonna be because I knew a little bit about it because I read the novella a long time ago, and I had been trying to remember what it was about, but so I kind of knew what the story was just from memory, but I was worried that on screen I was just like, oh no, what if it's too heavy? because I don't really want that right now. But it wasn't. It was wonderful. And it was weird in like the best way. Um, so yeah, I like that one. But back to my other recommendation. So my last recommendation was the book I just finished. It was The Bewitching. This is the book that I am currently reading. It is Bless Your Heart by Lindy Ryan. Now, this is one of those that has sat on my bookshelf for a little bit. And I'm so glad that I finally cracked it open because it is so fun. It's Southern Gothic, Southern Gothic horror, but it's about these women who live and they're all part of this one family, the Evans family, and they live in this small town in Texas. So it's very, like small town horror, but Texas. And they run a funeral parlor, and there's a vampire outbreak basically in their town. So people have described it online, and this is what really kind of intrigued me, and it so far feels to be a good comparison. They're comparing it, they're saying it's like Steel Magnolias meets Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It very much feels that way. Oh, I think this one's also set in the late 90s too, so I must be in like some kind of mood for that particular brand of horror. But um it does. It feels that way. It's definitely got the like very lovable characters that you would expect to find in a kind of like small town southern horror, but it's also very scary. Like when the vampires are scary in this book, it's not, I don't know. I guess when I was picking it up before, because the cover of the book itself is a little bit cartoony. And so I don't know if I was kind of expecting it to be like true blood type vampires, you know? I guess I was picking up on that with like the southernisms of it, but like these vampires are monstrous. And so it's more like Salem's Lot style vampires, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. But I enjoy the characters in this. And I think this is the first in a series. I want to say the second one has already come out, but I can't remember the second one's name right now. But this one's called Bless Your Heart. And it was recently optioned for television. I don't know if it's actually, I don't know if there's been any movement there or if anybody, I don't know what's happening, but I'm like crossing my fingers because it would be so good as a series. It would be so much fun. But yeah, I like it. I like it. It's a fun read. But it's also scary, which is exactly what I wanted. It's set in the South. Um, so yeah, I haven't finished it yet, but I imagine it's only going to get better. I'm already wanting to buy the second one. So that's Bless Your Heart by Lindy Ryan.
All right. So for my next recommendation, I'm going to give a second film, and this is a even more recent film than The Life of Chuck. So first, I want to give a quick shout out to one of the kids for this movie as a recommendation because I was not familiar at all with it, and he really wanted to go see it, and so I took him last week. Uh, it is a film called Iron Lung, directed by Mark Fitzbach, otherwise known as the YouTuber Markiplier. And I did not realize that it was the YouTuber Markiplier's movie until we were actually in the theater. I might have passed on it if I had done that. But if I had passed, I would not be able to recommend it because it was a really good movie. It's based on a indie video game, and um, it's basically the film version of a bottle episode of a TV show. Like almost the entirety of it takes place in a very very small space that is a submarine essentially that the main character has been welded inside of. It's there's a lot of kind of background to this movie, and I feel confident in being able to give you a lot of this stuff and it not ruin the movie for you, because I'll say from the get-go, this movie is not interested in answering most of your questions. You will leave the theater or uh, the video on demand in your living room uh, with a lot of questions even afterwards. But it takes place at some point in the future, and there has been what they call the quiet rapture. It is basically all of the stars and planets have vanished, and there's only those on spaceships or space stations or ships that have been left alive. So the human population has been reduced to a very small amount. And they have discovered something at the bottom of an ocean of blood on an uninhabited moon. And they use this character. His name is Simon. He's a convict, and they weld him into this submarine. And it's part of his essentially, he do this and we'll let you go kind of thing. We'll uh, you know forego your prison sentence if you do this for us. And so he has to dive this submarine down, but there's no porthole or viewing thing because it's an ocean of blood. But he does have a camera that I believe it uses X-rays, if I remember right, that he's able to use to take pictures to see the surrounding landscape. And it's really good. Like it really does uh, go through all the standard things of you start to question, are the people who are having him do this on the up and up? Are they giving him the whole story? Is what is down there? He does encounter some things down there, and that I will be vague about so as not to spoil. But it's really well done, and especially it's just over 2 hours, but it doesn't really ever seem to drag at any point, even though almost the entire thing takes place in what is probably a, 6 or 12 foot tube. So um, it's really interesting and really good. And he's not the only person, like the Simon is not the only person in the movie, but he is mostly the only person that you see. Most of the other communication is over radio through a speaker. But yeah, I don't know what else to say because I still have a lot of questions, um, lots and lots and lots of questions. But it's definitely worth watching. It just came out in theaters. It was released January 30th, 2026. So I think it had a limited run, so it may not be playing nationwide. If you're able to catch it once it's available for rent or video on demand, it's definitely worth the watch.
All right, it's back to me, and I am going to talk now about the book I'm looking forward to reading. So I think it was late in last year, late in 2025, I became aware that there was going to be a new Simone St. James book coming out, and it came out toward the end of January. So it is out now. It's been out for a couple weeks. It's called A Box Full of Darkness. And I was just excited that another Simone St. James novel was coming because I really enjoy her books. And I've read several of them. I have not read all of them, but I've read uh, many of them. And I'm in the process of trying to get through the ones I have not read. And now I've got a new one. And the other interesting thing about this book, I thought, was that she's returning to Fell, New York, where that creepy roadside uh, motel, the Sundown Motel, resides. And so I don't think this book really has much to do with the Sundown Motel per se, but it's the same place. She's returning to that same creepy town, Fell, New York. Listeners, if you've listened to this podcast for a while, you know that we did a theme at one point about hotel, motel, like traveling horror, and one of our episodes was on the Sundown Motel. So I'm literally going to just read what's on the back of the book because I have not read this. It's just something I'm looking forward to. But this is the gist of this one. Strange things happen in Fell, New York. A mysterious drowning at the town's roadside motel. The unexplained death of a young girl whose body is left by the railroad tracks. For Violet Vale and Dodie Esme, the final straw was their little brother's shocking disappearance, which started as a normal game of hide and seek. As their parents grew increasingly distant, the sisters were each haunted by visions and frightening events, leading them to leave the town and never look back. Violet still sees dead people, spirits who remind her of Sister, the menacing presence that terrorized her for years. Now, after nearly 2 decades, it's time for a homecoming because Ben is back and he's ready to lead them to the answers they've longed for and long feared. So this is a book I'm looking forward to. I really like Simone St. James's ghost stories that she started out with in her career. I really enjoyed her mystery thrillers that always have a little bit of the supernatural in them. And I'm assuming this is not going to be any different in mixing that idea of mystery and the supernatural. So I'm looking forward to checking it out at some point.
Yeah, I think we're all big fans of Simone St. James, and I'm really excited about that one too, Mel. I didn't realize it takes place in the same little creepy New York town as the Sundown, so I'm even more excited now to read that one. All right, well, so I'm kind of cheating with this last one a little bit, and I'm calling this my wild card. And I call it that because I watched this. It's a film and I watched it a few years ago. It has stuck in my brain ever since. But I was thinking about this because I was like, okay, we're doing this whole episode on snow day recommendations. Like what, since we've all been iced in over the past few weeks, what have we been kind of doing to pass the time? And I shared the books that I'm reading, and those are great recommendations. But I was also thinking, ooh, like what would really capture the kind of snowed in feeling? And I came up with there were a lot of books and movies, obviously, that deal with that. I mean, most famously, The Shining, right? But then I started thinking there's this film that I hear some people talking about it. I don't hear a ton of people talking about it. It came out in 2019 and it's called The Lodge. It's and again, it's my wild card because I did not rewatch it. I thought about rewatching it, but then I was like, I don't want to do that to myself because it's an intense movie. This is like completely the opposite of like a feel good fun horror, like, oh, we're gonna go kill vampires. No, this is bleak. So know that going in. um I'll just give you a little bit of setup for it. I don't want to give too much away about this if you haven't seen it, but so it stars Riley Keough, who I really enjoy her stuff, but she's she plays this woman named Grace, and Grace grew up in a cult, and it was this really extremist religious cult, and it was a doomsday cult. So everyone died by mass suicide. She was the only one to survive, and this cult was led by her father. So she has lost like everybody. And she meets this man. This is before the start of the film. She meets this man who is doing a book on extremist cults. And as he's researching it, he meets her to like interview her. And he's been separated from his wife, who is also played by Alicia Silverstone, and she's fantastic. But um, he's been separated from his wife, and he falls in love with Grace and announces that he's going to marry Grace. And this sets off just this kind of domino effect in the family. So they've got 2 kids, that now Grace is gonna be the stepmother of, a boy and a girl. Jaden Martell, by the way, who is in, Stranger Things. Um, he's the son in this, but anyway, she goes with her soon to be family, her fiance and his 2 kids out to this lodge that is in the middle of nowhere, and I want to say it's like in Massachusetts. And they do this, and the dad's like, "Hey, we're gonna do this so we can all like get to know each other. We're all gonna go spend some family time in this lodge, and it's gonna kind of like cement our family together." Um, he has to leave. Something happens with work. I don't even remember what ends up happening, but he ends up leaving, and it's just Riley Keough and the 2 kids, like her 2 soon to be stepkids that are left there. And they get snowed in, and things just very quickly go downhill. I don't want to say anything else other than the kids don't really want her there, and she kind of knows it. Um and I don't want to say really anything else because it starts going to places that I was just like, "Oh my god, what?" um It's very good, but very bleak, and I thought, if you really want to, like, capture that, like, what is it to be feel like to be, like, snowed in somewhere, um, and yeah, I think this is a really good one, so, yeah, that's what I'm gonna call my 3rd recommendation. Again, it's a wild card, not for everybody. um, I surely did not wanna watch it again. It was one of those that I was like, "No," it was a great movie. It really, I don't know, I hate to say, like, I enjoyed it. It was horror for sure. Um, a lot of it is psychological. I'll say that. But the horror elements were wonderful. So, uh, yeah, that's what I'm going to recommend, but, like, with an asterisk maybe. Um, The Lodge from 2019.
Well, I guess that brings us to me and my final recommendation for this. And I did very deliberately choose this to be my last recommendation because partly, as we alluded to in our intro, we all three just recently experienced some very severe winter weather. I think myself and Lisa probably had the worst of it. I think I may have had the absolute worst of it where I'm located. But I spent several days with no power and, um, so had to keep myself occupied. And so I'm very glad to have been recommended a book, well, actually a series of books, but I powered my way through the very first book during this several days with no power, and it's a series called Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinneman. And yes, the name sounds kind of silly. The description sounds kind of silly. And the second you start reading it, you get hooked, is how it was pitched to me. And that was 100% accurate. Um, in a thing that sort of is reminiscent of the opening of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the story starts off with a sudden reclamation of Earth by aliens. In an instant, every single man-made structure collapses, killing billions of people. And the survivors are given a choice: stay on the surface to die or enter a quote unquote world dungeon, an 18 level subterranean labyrinth designed as basically a sadistic alien reality TV show that's also mixed with an actual like RPG game. And so this particular book series follows Carl, our titular character, and his ex girlfriend's prize winning Persian show cat, who are traversing this dungeon together. And if that doesn't hook you, I don't know what will. But it is it is phenomenal. Like I blazed through the first book, hooked my Kindle up, like set up my phone as a hotspot so that I could download the second book onto my Kindle without power, so I could get into that one sooner. That's how quickly I just devoured this. I'm almost through with the second book now, and it's only been about a week. And there's currently 7 books, I believe, with the 8th one coming out that sometime this year. So it's an extended series, like I mentioned, the 18 level dungeon. The first book only takes place over like the first 2 levels, I think, of this dungeon. So obviously he has a long way to go until the end of the series. But it is a quick, fast, wild ride. There's lots of satirical humor. It's got some very biting social commentary of, our consumer culture and things of that nature as well. But it's fun, it's funny, it's fast paced, it's just great is all I can say. So I don't know what else I could say that without giving away spoilers and such. But yeah, it's just a fantastic book. Well, 2 books so far. So I can't give the final verdict on the entire series, but from what I've read, it does kind of maintain its level of quality. And if you prefer audiobooks, apparently, I did kind of do some deep diving after I read the first book, and apparently the audiobook is the preferred way to experience this series because the voice acting is apparently exceptional. So um, if you are intrigued by this, you might also want to check out the audiobook. The friend of mine that recommended this said that they were actually listening to the audiobook while reading the physical book. I guess the Kindle book. So absolutely 1,000 times recommend this series, Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Denneman. And yeah, I don't know what else to say there. So I guess I will probably go ahead and wind us down and say that, like Mel and Lisa said earlier, I'm happy to be back from this hiatus, and we've got a lot of fun things planned in store for the back half of this season and beyond. But in the meantime, if you have any recommendations that you want to throw at us or have any thoughts about the recommendations that we've given here, don't forget that we are at NoFearCast on Twitter and Instagram, and that we have a Facebook page. Our email is nofearcast@gmail.com. If you love what we're doing, consider supporting us on Patreon. And we have a merchandise available on our website, nofearcast.com. Or simply rate and review us, which is entirely free and helps other listeners find us. Theme music is by Nicholas Gasparini, and we will be back in 2 weeks with a brand new episode.